Good evening to one and all present here. I'm Miriam Paul from the Office of Alumni and Corporate Relations, and I take immense pleasure in welcoming you all to the discussion and book launch on innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem in IIT Madras. I request Mr. Kaviraj Nair, CEO, Office of Institutional Advancement, to deliver the welcome address.
Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this evening's event. It's my distinct pleasure to welcome you to today's gathering at IIT Madras, where we celebrate and explore the remarkable ecosystem of innovation and entrepreneurship that has flourished here. Today's event is more than actually a discussion or a book launch. It's actually a tribute to the journey and vision that have propelled IIT Madras to the forefront of India's technological and entrepreneurial landscape. We are honored to have a stellar lineup of distinguished alumni, esteemed faculty members, and thought leaders who have each contributed uniquely to this ecosystem. Together, they represent the past, the present, and future of entrepreneurship here at IIT Madras. Through their insights, we hope to delve into the evolution of our entrepreneurial culture, understanding how this community has enabled ideas to become impactful ventures, transforming not only industries but also the society. This evening, we will hear from several of our alumni who have been pioneers in their respective fields, be it Mr. D. Chandrasekharan's story at Madras Dyslexia Association, or Mr. Rajiv Lochan's leadership at Sundaram Finance, or Kedar Kulkarni's advancements in AI at Hyperverge, and Mr. Venkat Vishwanathan's achievements at Latent View. Each story reaffirms the potential within this community to inspire and create change. We are particularly grateful to have Mr. V. Shankar with us. His journey with CAMS is a powerful example of how the alumni of IIT Madras nurtures impactful ventures, and his commitment to supporting future entrepreneurs speaks volumes about the strength of our alumni network. Later, we will share a video highlighting Mr. Shankar's inspiring collaboration with IIT Madras, followed by a fireside chat where he will share insights on his entrepreneurial journey. We are also delighted to announce the relaunch of the book, An Eye for Detail, which is now complete with audio and video podcasts. It's a resource that captures the journey of CAMS and along with Mr. Shankar's journey of building CAMS and from inception to the current state. Thank you to everyone here for your continued support and belief in IIT Madras as a beacon of innovation. May today's discussions and reflections inspire us all to contribute to the legacy of impact and excellence that is IIT Madras. Thank you, and very warm welcome to all of you.
Thank you, sir. It is now time to dwell deep into IIT Madras' journey in entrepreneurship and innovation through an insightful panel discussion. This dynamic ecosystem has been made possible thanks to the dedicated efforts of our esteemed faculty, students, and alumni. We are fortunate to have with us a distinguished panel of alumni entrepreneurs from across 3 generations who will share their insights and experiences from their entrepreneurial journey. I would like to call on stage Mr. D. Chandrasekhar, entrepreneur and president, Madras Dyslexia Association. Mr. Venkat Vishwanathan, chairperson, Latent View. Mr. Rajiv C. Lochan, MD and CEO, Sundaram Finance Limited. Mr. Kedar Kulkarni, co-founder and CEO, Hyperverge. And the moderator of the panel, Mr. Pradeep Gulipalli, co-founder, Tiger Analytics. Over to you, sir.
No? Yes, perfect. Yeah, there always need to be some tech glitches whenever there's in a tech org. Always when we do demos for clients, everything will work perfectly till the demo moment, right? Something needs to happen there. So I'm glad we started on the right note. So I was called for the panel discussion. I was hoping there would be a moderator till Kavi called me just an hour ago and said, "You are the moderator." I said, "No, fine. These are people who have great panels." I thought I'll have the conversation with them. So excuse me for not being too prepared as a moderator. So maybe we start off. It's a wonderful folks, and I've had just a couple of words with them stepping into that. So maybe we can just hear from them, few sentences about themselves, their journey, so that you know who is speaking. As a moderator, maybe I can start off first. Pradeep, I'm the co-founder of Tiger Analytics. I founded this a company about 12 years ago, 2011, 2012. What we do today is work with enterprises for their data analytics, AI strategy and execution. That's what we do. Spread across multiple countries globally. I'm based in Chennai. That's about me. And I was coming back, and for some of them who I was not aware of, so I was just doing some quick Googling, and Mr. Chandrasekhar there, I read about him as saying he's the man with the Midas touch. So a few words from you about your journey.
I became an entrepreneur in the 1970s just by accident, because getting a job was such a big problem in the 70s, early 70s, and I had made a tactical error of not taking a IIM seat or a US seat, and I went to Germany for training. I thought after training I'm going to be most sought after, but then I realized that there was no job available for that. So I became an entrepreneur by force. And the initial years, I had very good support from IIT. I'll talk about it when I get an opportunity.
Yes. Thanks. Venkat, he's been an inspiration for me in many ways, the person who led Latent View to the biggest IPO India has ever seen.
Yeah, hi. I'm Venkat Viswanathan. I left IIT in the 90s, and I probably took the low risk option compared to DC, so I went to one of the IIMs like Shankar. And but when I came out, I must say I had no plans of really starting anything. We were very lucky to be the generation which kind of graduated just as India liberalized, and this is like 91, 93, 95, when all the changes that are happening in the Indian ecosystem, I would say all the way from policy to securities markets to job creation, all aspects were changing, and we were able to kind of ride that wave. And right after that was a technology wave, so I joined Cognizant, which is Chennai's own technology firms. I was there for maybe a few years there, learning the craft. And then after 10 years of working, I did feel maybe this time I gave it a shot. How bad can this be? As in, maybe I'll come back into the job market in a few years if I haven't managed to kind of get this business off the ground. And that was the reason to kind of step out in mid 2000s. And it's been a great journey. We have no regrets. Focus primarily around data analytics, somewhat similar to what Pradeep was saying. And it's been an interesting journey serving some of the most recognized brands in the world.
Rajiv, you've been at the helm of one of the most iconic brands all of us Chennaites admire. So, intro about yourself.
Thank you. First of all, I must thank IIT for offering this opportunity. In many ways, I feel a little bit of a fake compared to all these icons that are genuinely entrepreneurs. I mean, I've taken some risks, but not the kind of risks that these individuals have taken. I graduated in '93, a year after Venkat did, and I did the most traditional path that you can expect. Unlike DC, I went to the US, studied, worked, and then came back. I think perhaps the biggest risk I took was coming back to India in the 22, 23 years ago in the early 2000s when the economy was just opening up. But over the last 23 years, I've seen reasonable amounts of India. I think perhaps the only salient fact that's noteworthy is that all my life I've worked only with 100+ year companies. Certainly not by choice, it was, or design, it sort of happened. I started at American Express, which is now 175 years, and I spent a significant amount of time at McKinsey, which is close to 100 now. And then I had the chance to spend 5 years at the Hindu Group, which is 143, 144 now. So in a sense, there is a good amount of learning about what makes organizations endure. And I joke that Sundaram Finance, which is only 70 years old now, is my startup gig. So in that sense, I can perhaps bring some perspectives of my very illustrious seniors who built these enduring organizations to bear, but nothing quite like what these 4 remarkable gentlemen have pulled off in their lives. So happy to be here as part of this August panel. Thank you.
Thanks, Rajiv. And Kedar is the youngest of all of us, probably the closest to some of the students who are here.
Yeah. Nice to meet everyone, and thanks for IIT Madras for inviting. I think not so long back I was sitting, and I think I remember Rajiv's presentation even now. I reminded him. I think he had come and made a presentation for McKinsey, and I think we all our eyes lit up. Okay, this is what consulting is, and I would see him running in the campus as well. So I think time flies very fast. I am a co-founder of Hyperverge. Hyperverge is an AI company. We help out with identity verification. So anytime any one of you is looking to get a loan, open a bank account, get a SIM card, get an insurance policy, get a brokerage account open, you need to do your identity verification or the KYC process as we talk about. This process used to be a very paper-based process. So you would take, we would submit application and it would take a day for that account to get opened or 2 days for that account to get opened. Hyperverge converted it into a digital process and an AI-based process. So today, if you go into a Jio store, for 70% of the customers, as they walk out of the store, the SIM card is already activated, right? So that's what Hyperverge does. We have done it for about 1 billion people across India, Southeast Asia, Africa, etc. And now we are helping out with customer onboarding. Identity verification is a step of the customer onboarding process. Now we are trying to help out with the whole thing. Sundaram Finance is a customer of Hyperverge. Yeah.
Thanks, Kedar. So maybe Kedar, since you have the mic, I'll start off with a very important question first, especially on behalf of any students who are here. When after they graduate, is there hope that food will get better from mess to what you have now?
So I actually ate at Taramani guest house today and it was surprisingly very good. All my memory of Himalaya is not, I think, something that I would like to remember a lot. So we would very often go to the Andhra messes right outside, very affordable, very good food. But yeah, I was very surprised today, very happy.
So then at least there is things are better looks like, and there is hope that once you graduate, food will get better. So you can rest in peace with that. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about the overall entrepreneurial support structure and the innovation ecosystem that's now really buzzing at IITM. eCell, Research Park, seed funding, startup demo days. There's so many things that are happening right now. It's such a wonderful thing to see, and I'm sure as people who have graduated from the campus at different times, each one of us had different experiences that shaped our entrepreneurial journeys. So maybe we can hear from each of the entrepreneurs leaders who is here as to what is it was in their times that inculcated in them, that triggered off that entrepreneurial streak, even though they might have realized it late. Since you are the most recent graduate, Kedar, you can talk about what's happening, at least what was happening in your times recently, and how that helped you, and then we'll move.
Yeah. when I joined IIT Madras, I think a year before that is when Center for Innovation started. And I even today remember that scene. I think we all came into CLT and I think different things were being introduced. And imagine as a first year you walk in and you are getting introduced to different things that happen at IIT Madras. And suddenly we start seeing these videos and live demos, and someone has built a self-balancing bicycle, a bicycle that just goes by itself. And then someone has built a robot that flies like a bird. And someone has built something that can go underwater and again come out and fly. And I was absolutely blown away. As in, I still remember that day. Absolute goosebumps, and I never imagined that such things are possible. I had never seen them on internet, I had never seen them anywhere. And I think that was my introduction to technology. As it was like a moment I can never forget. And ever since I fell in love with technology. I was in metallurgy, so a whole lot of my metallurgy profs were not very happy with the amount of time I was spending on tech. But I think I really fell in love.
Rajiv, what was it like during the early 90s when you were there?
Let me start off by telling the youngsters here that the food and coffee in Sundaram Finance is absolutely the best. So any of you that is, keen on food, please do come see me. We'd love to have an association where we can do things beyond food. But as Venkat mentioned, the early 90s were, sort of a transition phase where the country was liberalizing, things were opening up. And to be candid, I missed a big chunk of that, where I spent the next 10 years studying and working in the US, and that was the fashionable thing to do in those days. Unlike Venkat, I wasn't good enough to get into one of the IIMs, and so I did the less risky path of going overseas to study, get a master's degree. So I missed the early liberalization period, but I got back to India in 2001, and that period from then till 2000, till the global financial crisis was actually quite a run-up, where the notion of the consumer actually took off in a substantial way, and a lot of work I was doing was in the banking and financial services space, and so saw barcodes coming up. We saw ATMs taking off in a very big way, debit cards, credit cards sort of taking off. So a lot of what defines India by virtue of the digital public infrastructure had its, in a sense, analog version a little bit before in that early 2000 period. But to me, I think what is critical or what defines entrepreneurs and what I have seen in my experience of the early days of founding an organization is 2 or 3 things, right? One, there needs to be a genuine problem to the consumer that you ought to be solving. A lot of what we've seen in the last 10, 15 years has just been copy-paste of what applies in Western markets. To some extent that has merit, but a lot of what we've seen has not particularly served the Indian consumer as much. Second, I think there is a genuine need to make the enterprise commercially viable. There's only so long you can live off the benefits of widows and orphans from pension funds and such overseas. You've got to be able to generate cash flows and money here that the consumer is willing to pay, which means you have to be able to solve a genuine consumer problem. And 3, I think you've got to design whatever you're doing for the long haul. Lots of people want to flip, make a quick buck, retire and invest. I think that's a reasonable path, but it's not clear to me it's a genuinely fulfilling path. I think the folks here are building institutions that will be remembered long after them, right? These are long-standing institutions, and that's what I've had the privilege of being associated with. The concept of EMIs that all of us are familiar with now was introduced by Sundaram Finance. Sundaram Finance amended the SBI Act that allowed banks to lend to non-banks, which then opened up the entire financial services system. The notion of financial inclusion, which is popular these days, was done in the early 50s when we were founded to provide access to truck drivers who were not getting access to finance. So there is and similarly at the Hindu, there are several examples I can state of being ahead of the curve, identifying genuine customer problems, solving for them, but solving for them in a way that is sustainable for the long term. And so endurance is quite important in institutions as much as it is with individuals. So I'd say those are 3 or 4 things to keep in mind as people think about entrepreneurship and innovation. again, we can talk a lot more. I don't want to hog the mic. Let me hand over to Venkat, who's actually done something real in terms of an idea that he's now grown to something quite substantial.
Thanks, Rajiv. I think whenever you hear Rajiv keep deflecting credit and saying he's not an entrepreneur, you should just kind of dumb it down. He's done a lot more being a change agent for a lot of these organizations which are in some sense trying to pivot to the new world, and he's the change agent who's kind of giving them the direction in terms of where to take them. But I think very similar times that we all graduated in the 90s, and as I said, we are very fortunate. India as a country, a lot of concepts changed. The ability for people to even think about entrepreneurship was a far-fetched thing. As DC said in his times, it's only accidental. You can't find a job, then you better create a job. While in our times, I think we already had some role models. We already had the whole IT story starting to take off in India. So there were enough publicity around wealth creation as well as sharing of wealth, which gave us the confidence that something like this can be done. Again, from a career exposure perspective, working for a company which was serving international markets, we could see the amount of confidence that customers have in us. I must say, when I first entered that sector in late 90s, 98, 99, I was as much a skeptic, maybe because of my credit ratings background or something. I said, this is some smoke and mirrors and it's going to kind of fall apart in a couple of years. Once year 2000 problem is done. And then to my utter surprise, and thankfully that ensured I continued to have a job and actually gain from the wealth creation that company made, we went on to kind of solve multiple problems. Year 2000 was more like a Trojan horse, which gave credibility to what is possible from India. And then, and I have seen this in the latent view journey, India is a real fount of fantastic talent who are really interested in making a mark in the world. Like some of our people, and I'm sure Pradeep sees this every day in his organization as well, they are young 20-somethings who have barely any experience, but what they lack in experience, they really compensate for in their motivation to make an impact, the drive that they bring, and the confidence that they have in terms of how their role in the world. And a lot of our customers give us that feedback, saying it's actually a motivation asymmetry. It's not a capability issue here. I know you guys are not hugely capable on day one, but what I see is these people really push themselves to kind of achieve what is important for me. And that level of attention we don't get from anyone, right? And that's the reason we want to do more business with you. So in many ways, I think it's the time frame which has helped us. Of course, when we were in IIT, we didn't have the entrepreneurship ecosystem this way. ICSR was probably already there, so the connections with the industry was there, but we didn't have the ecosystem that Ashwin and his team are building out, and all other people in IIT system have created, which is great to see. And I wish we could be going to universities at this age rather than when we went, and maybe our paths will go in a different direction. So I'll hand it off to DC to share his story.
So when I came back to the institute and told my professors that I have become an entrepreneur, they said, that's a job of a Coimbatore college. Why are you doing it? That was the first reaction. But I continued, but IIT had a fantastic workshop those days. So for an entrepreneur like me, IIT was very helpful. That way I used to come and get a lot of support from the workshop. Then I also got into a little bit of value-added chain. I got a very good opportunity from UNICEF. They were looking for someone to develop a machine to make iodized salt.
People who inspire you, and you feel like, hey, that's something what they've achieved. It's quite unachievable, and it can be quite daunting for someone in their late teens or to be listening to someone like that talk at that time. So there were all these trailblazers. I distinctly remember again Guitar Prasanna. There was he had come and was like, hey, you just do something different that you're passionate about and still become such a luminary. So it was that was fascinating. So I would love to hear from your experiences. What were some of those sparks, those interactions with those classes, those interactions with professors? or alumni that have influenced your journeys, triggered some of these decision points in your careers?
Everyone is passing it around. Yeah, I think IIT had this whole extramural thing. I'm sure it was there in your times as well, and hopefully we haven't lost it and we continue doing it. It was a great way to open the minds of young people in terms of what is possible out there, right? So it's not just people who are, how do I say, achievers in traditional business kind of domain, but we were meeting people from completely different backgrounds, right? So, and it gave you the confidence in many ways. It's a graduation. For most of us, we walk in as really young boys and girls who are pretty much all you have done is nerdy things at school, and so you turned up at this place and you barely have any idea of what the future holds and where you want to be. And these were the sessions which really kind of inspire you to kind of think bigger of yourself, challenge yourself. And IIT, as I keep telling my children, I was never successful in convincing them in coming anywhere near IIT. The only thing they were happy about visiting IIT was for the sports facilities or seeing the deer when they were young. And they said something must be wrong if both of you went to places like this. So we'll keep a safe distance from these places. But if you look at it for people who come to IIT, the biggest thing is the network, the kind of people you interact with, the challenges that you face growing up, and in some ways convincing yourself, overcoming your imposter syndrome and saying, I belong here as well, and I will achieve something which at least justifies to myself that I have the ability, right? And that's actually a lot of the IIT influence, in my opinion, is the 4 years that you spend with the kind of people that you kind of exposed to. And some of them, of course, you only later on in your career you find out what all they go on to kind of achieve, but you start seeing early glimpses of that already. If I were to pick out, to your point about you met some personalities, Pradeep, at that point in time, it was not so much personalities for me, but there were certain kind of seminal stories, right? And it's just, it catches in your mind. I remember it's probably around 2004 or 5, there was this Business Week article in the US, which is how math is going to change the world, right? And I actually tracked down that reporter, and I went and met him for coffee in New York when I eventually got there to try and build this company up. I introduced him to South Indian cuisine. He had never heard of. The only Indian food he had ever had is some naan and some other things. And when I showed him a dosa, he said, like, I didn't know India has food like this. But over dosas, we had a great conversation, and then he featured me in his blog, which he was writing. He has written multiple books on this. But he saw the trend as a reporter that there is a change that is happening, and it's not as if new math is getting created, but computing capability is reaching a point where all the things theoretically we had in math now has an outlet, and companies are starting to kind of adopt. And this is again early days for Amazon, or maybe already 10 years into Amazon, and one of the few companies is really pushing how can we kind of adopt all of this and apply it in their business. So for me, those were things which are great validations, saying we are onto something. It's not as if I'm trying to kind of think there is an opportunity here. There are other people out there who are doing this as well. And then you meet customers, and then initially they're all skeptical, but once they catch the bug, they're chasing you now. They're saying, hey, you told me 6 months back and I was not ready for this. I went and talked to my colleagues, and now they want to hear more. When can you be here? And then it became more a case of how often can you travel so that you're there when they call you. And so I can certainly see that as one of the catalysts of how things go, and especially IIT alumni. And DC, I think, mentioned this briefly as well. We all had this wave of support, and if there are young entrepreneurs here who worry about how will I even ever get started, I can assure you there is a huge number of well-wishers that you will kind of stumble upon, many of whom are IIT alumni, some are not. But these are people who see you have taken the toughest step, which is jump off the cliff, right? Which many of them would have liked to do, but they've never done it. And now that you have done it, they make it a personal mission to make sure you catch the draft and you don't kind of come down. And I have been so fortunate over the years at various stages where such people have helped us, and I'm sure they have helped many of the others in this forum as well. I'll pass it on to the others now.
We will hear from the next generation.
He's a McKinsey consultant. He knows how to
Formally.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of interactions in IIT Madras which were very powerful. The time Krishnan Balasubramaniam sir, Mahesh sir, Senthil Nathan sir, Ashok sir, so many people who spent with us at that time. I would say that the truly transformative one moment, if I have to think about, was spending time with Sridhar. And I think we got funded in 2014. We were always very good at computer vision, and our idea was to build a search engine on top of photos. After a lot of years of hard work, we built a search engine on top of photos where I can say, hey, my photos with Praveen at a cafe in Chennai, and it will show up those photos. And this was supposed to be a freemium product, so you get some free storage, and then you have to pay beyond that, etc. And we launched it. It was called Silver. And I think 1 month down the line, Google launched Google Photos. And it was free, and it was on every Android device, and it had unlimited storage. And I think overnight we got killed, right? As in the 1 week before, the conversation was, hey, this is very nice, I always had this problem, why did no one build this before, etc. And the week after that it was, yeah, but Google Photos is free, what's different, right? So we could see that switch. And then we tried doing few things, nothing was working out, and we had 6 months money left. And at that time, everyone's advice, we had built very good technology, so in terms of all benchmarks, our face recognition, scene recognition were among the top 10 in the world. So everyone's advice was sell the company. Maybe the valuation at that point would be $10-15 million. 2 years out of college, not a bad outcome, start the next one, we'll fund that also. We were largely an IIT Madras team back then, and we all sat down in a small pantry and we were discussing, so is this the end of story? Should we go and sell the company? And when we said if society, money, none of these are constraints, what would all of us want to do? Someone wanted to work in education, someone wanted to work in healthcare, all very fundamental problems, no perception problem, right? Fundamental problems that can have life-changing impact. Our investor is an IIT Madras guy, so I had a conversation with Venki Harinarayan, based out of SF, owns San Francisco Unicorns now. And Venki told, Kedar, all of that is good. You have 6 months money left. Startups should not try to do work that helps community. You get rich. There will be some time when you'll have enough money that you can do all of this, right? And I'll fund the next venture also. Right now may not be the right time. We could understand the logic. It's a very logical conversation when you have 6 months money left, but we could not digest it, right? Somehow we took it in, but we could not digest it. And I was just, uneasy, trying to figure out, is there a way? And that's where I came across Sridhar Vembu. Actually, Nagarajan sir dropped an email that led to a call. And when I saw Zoho, on one side we could see a very large B2B, very successful SaaS business. That time was at about $500 million in revenue. And then I could see all the community effort that Sridhar was able to do. I could meet people in Zoho team whose father was a cycle repair shop guy, never really had formal education beyond 12th, but is now a member in the machine learning team at Zoho, never had to take loans, and is making maybe 30-40 lakhs. And instead of taking a 10 lakh loan to go and study in some college in Tamil Nadu, this kid was able to fund his siblings' education because Zoho was paying 10K stipend while they were studying, right? At 19 years old was contributing 70K to a cycle repair shop father. So that brought tears to our eyes, right? If it's like one life that we have got and we have to make something happen, it was very clear that we need to build an org like that. And I think that day, that night, we became a B2B company. Sridhar had told us, try to get 2 clients that will pay $250,000 each. We really banged our head on who will pay $250,000 to 24-year-olds. And yeah, it eventually we figured it out. We made $250,000 that year, kept doubling every year for a good period of time, always remained profitable, to your point. And yeah, this year Hyperverge, we started Hyperverge Academy in 2020, right when COVID happened. And the idea was to take kids from under 2 lakh annual income families could be our drivers, could be all of these personas that we spoke about, put them through a course on full stack development. So this year 100 families will come out of poverty through this, and I think that's what has been the most powerful conversation of my life, that we can build businesses which are economically very successful, at the same time can contribute in a very meaningful way to the community. And I think that's sort of like a life mission for a whole lot of us now.
Wonderful, thank you. So, no. I think in the interest of time, maybe one last question to DC, and it is can you imagine 1970s. Where was the? How does the ability to take those risks, right, at that time, when the environment was not very conducive, and to do this, how did you build that? Was it something you always had growing up? Was it something you built during your education?
No, there was an instinct to take an unbeaten track. That's why I went to Germany. It fizzled out, but that continued. So I continued to take another unbeaten track in our family. All my family members are from government service. So I took this path. And I had to struggle a lot. See, those were the days where there was a heavy shortage of capital and market, both. Both were in short supply. So I could not carry on the business beyond a point. So I was forced to become a serial entrepreneur. Every 8 years, I was starting a new business. Because in 7-8 years, you don't have any more buyers for you. So such was the problems. So but over a period you get used to it, and this UNICEF was a big breakthrough for me. That helped me to settle down, and after that I built some more businesses around that.
Yep. Venkat, what was it like for you? You right out of graduation, that was 90s, not a great time. There was IT going on, and after all of that, maybe 15 years after you graduated, you started Latent View. In fact, when I'd finished grad school, I'd heard about you starting, and that was a moment of inspiration for us, saying, hey, there is someone starting up in this space from IITM. So what were those triggers? What led you to start?
Yeah. I think, like DC said, I was probably also we all share the trait of trying to go, when everybody is zigging, you go the other way kind of thing. So I was one of the few in my class. In our generation, pretty much everybody went abroad, right? So the most common thing was you get a call to do a master's and maybe a PhD, and then you go abroad. So there were only about a handful of us, maybe 2-3 of us, or maybe half a dozen of us in any given year who went to IIM and who chose to stay. In my case, I think some of the things were, number one, I wanted to do something which allows me to stay in India. I had a very strong, naive view of India as the future without any basis for it. And this is like early 90s when India had not yet probably liberalized to the extent, or it was just starting to liberalize. And I probably didn't understand all of this. In fact, IIM was a good place where we had great economics faculty in Calcutta, where they actually explained to us what is the process that India is kind of going through and why this could be a seminal point in time if things play out well. And at any given time, this is true. Even today, we are only 3.5-4 trillion. There are enough people who will talk about India can be 18 trillion, 40 trillion, all kinds of numbers are thrown about depending on how far you stretch the timeline. Now, nothing is a given, but we have a shot at it, right? And so the belief was there, and I remember when I was working somewhere, I met these Finnish people, people of Finland. In Nokia was my customer, so I used to travel in my previous job regularly to Helsinki. And when we meet these people, they were talking about how China, this is like early 2000s, and they were saying how China as a market has really come about for Nokia, right? And this is, that time India's telecom revolution had not yet happened. And they used to show me the Nokia annual report, where India is not even in the top 10 markets for them, and China is there. And they didn't really think India can go any very far in their scenario. And fast forward 10 years, it was a completely different story. We are already in their top 5 markets, and if Nokia started holding their main board meeting in New Delhi to get their board members to understand the India opportunity. So the whole thing actually fundamentally changed. So in many ways, I keep saying we are just lucky to be in the right place at the right time as this change happened in India. And so the risks kind of kept going down in terms of starting off, and the potential for succeeding was always there. Now, of course, you still have to execute, you still have to do it in a way which allows you to scale, and all of us have at any given stage a certain ambition to go further. But if you ask me from an opportunity perspective, the India story and the timing of, like, we are also the internet generation. I remember in my final year in business school, we actually started using email, and pretty much internet and email had not yet come to the rest of the world. Maybe IIT had, maybe IIM had, maybe a few other universities had, and this is like before graphic interfaces and all that. Is like a Unix email, and you are sending messages to your classmates in a university in the US and all that. And just as I started working, Netscape as a browser was launched, or maybe a couple of years after I started working, and we were introduced to internet, and we had unlimited internet pretty much at work, and you're kind of spending hours trying to push the limits of what can you do on the internet, right? So in some sense, we are a very lucky cohort to be in the right place at the right time. That was really the reason to kind of step out. I do remember, again, for whoever is young and still considering starting, when I went and told my parents that I'm quitting my job and I'm going to try my hand at starting a company, my dad was a little taken aback, and he's worked in a government service for all his life, and so why would you do that? I thought you were doing well, and I thought it's a good company, and you've done all these degrees, so why are you kind of trying to kind of take this risk? Because nobody anywhere in our family had done any of this. But to his credit, he also eventually reconciled himself and told me that, look, you guys have had the best education, and maybe you if there is a set of people in India who can potentially take this risk and still survive, you guys will fall in that list. So maybe you should do it. I don't have a problem. Thanks for letting me know, but you know what you're doing, so I will stay away from this. So I think those were the reasons, and those were the kind of scenarios as we started out.
Thanks, Venkat. Rajiv, some of the pivots you've had in your career, those are also not very traditional, right? From we've seen the journeys of McKinsey consultants and the way they go, but I felt it was the pivots to almost, it feels like an India pivot to me, the way you did. So would you like to talk about how you took those decisions, what was going on through your mind?
Thanks. As I said at the start, mine has been a very traditional, conventional approach, unlike DC, Venkat, and certainly Kedar, right? But I think at some point it was always clear that going to the US was a temporary phase to equip ourselves, and coming back to India was always the plan. To the point where when we landed in the US, they were handing out green cards like candy, right? And anybody that applied would get it. And we consciously chose not to apply for it, and therefore boxed ourselves into being thrown out of the country at some finite point. And that happened in 2000, 2001, where we naturally ran out of all the F and H visa options, and we had to literally come back. And it was quite fortunate that by then Preeti had finished her PhD and got a faculty position at IIT Bombay, and I could transfer with McKinsey to come back to India. So it was very much an India pivot, but it was very much part of also what the thinking was all along. But more than talking about my journey, I think what might be helpful for particularly the youngsters that are listening is maybe 2 or 3 things that are quite different from, I think, certainly journeys of folks on this side of the panel, right? We grew up in an environment of scarcity in India. I think you guys are growing up in an environment of plenty, a mindset of prosperity, and that creates a hell of a lot of opportunities. It also creates a hell of a lot of responsibilities, in my view. I mean, we could pursue what came ahead of us and get ahead, in a sense, but that was because our options were limited. This generation has so much that is possible. I mean, for example, we grew up with 2 television channels. We grew up with 3 brands of cars. The concept of mobile phones didn't exist. We didn't have barcodes to scan at retail stores. We had Wrangler and Lee were considered, you know, Uber brands, and now there's so many of them that are available, right? So it's a very different world that we grew up in, and therefore whatever life presented itself, we tried to grab on. You can call it pivots now, you can call it risks we took, but frankly, we just did what looked a little bit more interesting compared to where we were. These guys, I think, were more thoughtful in what they did. But for me, it was a little bit of one accident to another. And so I'd say in life, it's helpful to chase Saraswati, not Lakshmi. Saraswati is very hard to win over, but if you work hard, apply yourself, you will win her graces. And the interesting trick is Lakshmi is jealous of Saraswati, so she will follow. Right, so that's, I think, and this is a lesson my grandfather told me early on, but I think it really applies. It certainly applied to the Hindu, applies to Sundaram Finance, applies to many other long-lasting institutions that they focused on doing the right thing from a domain or expertise standpoint, didn't worry too much about money, and we just have plenty, right? At one point, the Hindu had aircraft to deliver newspapers. What you see today on bicycles and two-wheelers, the Hindu actually flew aircraft for almost like a 20-year period to deliver newspapers. That's the kind of prosperity that came out of doing right by the reader, doing right by the distributor, doing right by the writers, right? And there are plenty of such examples. The second thing I would say is there has to be a certain amount of effort, slog, and frugality in what you do. If you're not doing that, and money is coming too easy, and you don't know what to do with that money, then likely you're doing something wrong, which is unlikely to last for a very long time. And third, I would say, really count on IIT Madras. Certainly, I didn't count as much, but I think in current day and age, and also given the 50,000 plus alumni that exist now in IIT Madras, I think it's a hugely valuable resource. Plus also, I think IIT Madras's startups that I've seen in the more recent past are grounded in real world problems, solving real issues that consumers are faced with, not worrying too much about valuation or value creation, right? And many of the examples of IIT alumni in general, non-IIT Madras, are based a little bit on more flaky concepts in my view. I could be biased, but when I look at what Kedar is doing, or what Venkat and Pradeep are doing, or think about Athar and things like that, these are real world problems that they're solving, and they're doing well commercially. So that's, I think, another important sort of lesson to keep in mind. But nothing quite like slogging and working really hard and building a frugal mindset and really struggling. Without that struggle, without that adversity, carbon will remain carbon, right? It becomes diamond when it's subjected to enormous pressure and a lot of hard work. So please keep that in mind as you go about your entrepreneurial journeys.
Yep, so you summarized, explained Siddhir Bhavati Karmaja. Right, so everyone at IITM would resonate with you. So my final question, I'll end with Kedar. So the same topic. You started right out of college. I'm imagining something like social network movie, right? No, probably your warden would not be happy if you did that. But what caused you to start right out of college, and then you might be best placed to share some advice on how people wanting to start right off could leverage the ecosystem that IIT provides to make their journey a bit smoother.
Yeah, I think this is for all the young folks, and I think Rajiv mentioned make the best use of IIT Madras. I just want to give some stats quickly and then go into the question. So my first startup co-founders, IIT Madras. Second startup co-founders, IIT Madras. Life partner, IIT Madras. First set of investors, IIT Madras. So, first set of early advisors for startups, all IIT Madras. So, I think, and even today, I think, and fortunately so, our first CSR, once you cross a certain bracket, you have to compulsorily spend money on CSR. And we were very happy to spend that and more on IIT Madras, right? So, I think can't thank enough, and sometimes it's a coincidence. Few marks plus minus, you could be in another IIT because we all fill some sheet. Someone advises us, this branch, that branch, and plus minus few marks, you could be in a completely different place. Coming to the other piece of advice that really helped me when I was getting out of IITM. I think we think of startups and all as very risky, right? Largely we think there's a lot of risk. And there was Bala Parthasarthi, also an IIT Madras alum, who had come and he gave a lecture. And he mentioned that, hey, what is your life right now? What does your personal life look like right now? Some girl is not messaging you back, that is your personal life problem. Fast forward few years, you will be married. Now every decision you have to think about two people. Fast forward few more years, you will have kids. Now every decision you are thinking about, there is a being you are responsible for, etc. You want to do the right things. Fast forward few more years, you have aging parents which you are taking care of. So personal life will only get more and more complex as you move from 20s to 30s to late 30s, etc. So what he mentioned is either you can start off right now when no one expects anything from you. You earn, don't earn, as long as you don't ask money from parents, everyone is happy. So either you start now or you start when you are 40, when you have taken care of all of these people, right? Your kids, wife, parents, you have enough money, you have enough things to take care of all of them, and then you start off, right? I think everyone's story is different, so I would not make it like a formula. But the idea was, it's very easy when you are in 20s, it becomes more difficult when you move to later ages. The second thing is, we feel startups are risky. The other thing Bala Parthasarthi shared with us is pretty much, right, if you are on the corporate path beyond 40, 45, and Rajiv can talk more about it, your neck is on the line every 2 years or 3 years, right? Because a company has hired you, you are mostly at a leadership level, you get a limited time, limited opportunity to prove something. If that doesn't work out, they will move on. And most companies would want in-house leaders to be groomed, because he had mentioned a very nice example. Imagine if you get someone at the top, it means 5 people did not get that job who were already in that org, right? However, if they moved an in-house leader to a leadership position, now suddenly that leader's role someone has to fill. So one person gets to that role. That person's role someone has to fill. So it's like some 20 people get promoted because they, made an internal leader a leader, right? Whereas when you get someone from outside, everyone in some way is stuck at the same place. So he had mentioned pretty much your job is on the line every 3 years. So it's as risky as anything else. And if you start up, if it works out, you can continue. Warren Buffett is an entrepreneur at 94. He says he's tap walking to work. So, if it works out, you can go on for as long as you want. So it's not as risky, especially coming out of IIT Madras. It's not at all risky. We always used to think, what's the worst that can happen? And the funniest thing was, we can always go back. And for a year, if we have nothing to do, teach physics, teach maths. Every one of us knew something because of which we got in. And I'll kid you not, my physics books are still there in a box. I kept it because, I think someday it will come to use. And fortunately, it hasn't come to use. But they are still there. So there is no risk.
Wonderful.
On a lighter note, Kedar stopped with late 30s. I want to remind you that 50s, 60s, and 70s are coming.
Wonderful. Thanks for all the stories, anecdotes, and guidance for the upcoming graduates of IITM. Wonderful hosting everyone here. Thanks IITM, Kavi, for the opportunity. We'll move on.
Let's give a special round of applause for Pradeep.
Amazing job, and I think we did miss out some stories because Pradeep had to play this role, but very gracious of you to play this role.
We'll move on to the highlight of the evening now. So over to Shankar.
Thank you, sir. I request you all to please stay on stage. I would like to invite Professor Ashwin, Dean, Alumni and Corporate Relations, to felicitate our panel members and the moderator.
Please, okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir. It is now time for a small video on Mr. V. Shankar, founder CAMS, a leader whose partnership with IIT Madras has ignited a wave of creativity and progress.
Earlier generations of students, they all became professors or whatever, and that was the end of it. But today, the aspiration is that our students should become job creators, they should not become job takers.
See, there are many different sources of money at IIT. The industry gives money to solve problems, government gives money to run the place.
But when we try to explore a new idea, it takes time for us to convince people to provide us with funding. And that is where the funding from alumni, that's what we call as the seed funding.
For example, we had a very strong desire to create an innovation hub for our students. And Shankar stepped up and helped create the Sudha and Shankar Innovation Hub.
When we did our reunion in early 2000, I think 25th reunion, that was when a couple of the professors came around and we were debating what we could do back for the institute. There were a number of ideas.
They said, let's start a center for innovation. Let's create a place where students can just walk in with ideas, do what they want, and hopefully walk out with the product.
And so it happened. And the rest is history, as they say. I think CFI has really been responsible for pretty much everything that's happened since then on the innovation, entrepreneurship front, on campus and in research part.
And I think this is extremely critical because it is this which will make them tomorrow startup leaders.
CFI, I have seen how CFI has helped the institute and its DNA. I think in the beginning it was a small bunch of guys doing things on their own. But slowly it gathered momentum.
During our time in IIT, such facilities perhaps didn't exist. And anybody who comes and sees this facility is absolutely impressed by the scope and the potential that it offers to the current set of students.
Over the years, CFI grew from 3 or 5 clubs to today we are talking about 16 clubs.
And I feel IIT Madras has the best ecosystem for all kinds of help you need to do anything in life.
We have huge success, number of startups that have come out of CFI.
Right up there in the league is for me is Aether Energy. Aether Energy is today an electric bike company, one of India's first such electric bike companies. And the founders were the founders of Team Raftar, our Formula racing car here.
I think CFI was something exceptionally magical that IIT Madras got. I don't know if other IITs had something similar, frankly, and I don't think they did. People who actually wanted to build got an outlet that I don't think would have existed in the absence of CFI.
It's good that students are doing X or Y or Z and they will end up helping society. And what is the role of alumni in this whole exercise? Institutes really, in my opinion, their backbone is the relationship and the contribution back by the alumni. Because institutions, they depend on the goodwill of their successful alumni to take their institute from where they are to where it should be. IIT Madras has been particularly good in this regard. I think in terms of financial outreach, we have done very well. We are the top institution, but I think there is a lot to be done.
Walk the walk with us. I'm calling upon every alumni. Walk the walk with us like Shankar did and feel the pride in making a difference.
It is now time to delve into the remarkable entrepreneurial journey of Mr. V. Shankar, the visionary founder of CAMS, a pioneering company that has transformed the financial services landscape in India. I would like to call upon Professor Ashwin Mahalingam, Dean, Alumni and Corporate Relations, to host today's fireside chat. Please join me in welcoming Mr. V. Shankar to the stage, what promises to be an inspiring and insightful discussion.
Hello, hope this is working. Yeah, so good evening everyone and welcome to this fireside chat. I'm really glad actually in the previous panel that we were able to get Kedar here, because Kedar was one of the students who actually essentially started up CFI, which was what we saw in the video, which Shankar and also others from the class of 1981 have generously supported. So it's very nice to see that coming full circle. Just to sort of contextualize the earlier panel and connect it with this fireside chat, so along with a number of other faculty, I've been involved in helping set up the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And now today we have a system that proactively helps students. So we have Nirman, we have CFI is firing on all cylinders. So a student doesn't, we have the e-cell, things like this. Kedar was at the vanguard of that. He was one of the first students. We tried to help him a little bit. But I think the support that the institute gives students today is an order of magnitude more than what Kedar got. The other, except for DC, the other panelists started their entrepreneurial journeys, I guess, in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s, where the institute did not provide as much support as we did to Kedar and as we do to students today. But at least there was opportunity, and that was what Rajiv was talking about. We had liberalized, there were lots of interesting things happening. But the entrepreneurs who graduated earlier in the 70s and the 80s, I think that was a completely different time, right? Not only did you not have the kind of ecosystem we have today, you also did not have the opportunities that you had in the 90s and the early 2000s. I mean, this was the age of the license Raj, right? Where rather than selling what you made what you could sell, right? So it was sort of highly restrictive climate. And I think my respect and admiration for entrepreneurs who came out during that era is immense, because they had to fight against all kinds of odds. DC was a panelist who was an entrepreneur from the 70s, and Shankar is an entrepreneur who graduated in the 80s. So in that sense, really looking forward to hearing from you, Shankar. I just wanted to start off by asking you to reflect a little bit and describe your own journey for those of us who may not be as familiar with it. So can you talk a little bit about what happened after you graduated from IIT Madras, and a little bit about CAMS, what it is, what it does?
Thanks, Ashwin. First of all, thanks, Ashwin, for hosting me here. Very kind of you and kind of IIT. I want to bring this down to earth a little bit, right? All these words like visionary and all that. just a bunch of guys doing what at sometimes was the only possible thing to do under the circumstances, given the context. It was lucky that it led to where it led. I will give 99% credit to luck and just serendipity to get you where you are. 1% is taking advantage of that luck. So, a little bit like Venkat here, I worked for about a few years, and that is something I know that some of you guys came out of college and started business, started entrepreneurship. I think that working for a couple of years helps, because you do make a lot of mistakes, not necessarily in the tech where you're strong, but in everything else. The legal, the commercial, everything else you make mistakes. And if you do work for a couple of years, then those mistakes would have been made for somebody else, and you get to learn without great cost to yourself. May not matter these days because there is money chasing you, but in those days it mattered a great deal, because you ate what you killed. That's really what it was. There was no capital, there was nobody to back you. So yeah, so I worked for a few years, 3 or 4 years in Ponds, which is now a part of Levers. I did many things. It was a great incubation, and I have a colleague here as well, 2 or 3 colleagues who used to work with me. It was a great incubator because they put you through all the functions. They said 1 year in purchasing, 1 year in sales, 1 year in something else. So you are sort of admirably set up for an entrepreneurial career, should you be so inclined. They, of course, that was not their intention. They were not incubating you to leave and become an entrepreneur, but it helped a lot. Computers had just come into India. In fact, at Ponds, we were one of the first few companies in Chennai to purchase a PC. And for lack of anybody else showing interest in the organization, it landed by default at my desk with not Lotus 123. There was a predecessor to that, which was a sort of elementary worksheet. So great fun with that, and that is when it transformed me. I realized that it was not purchasing or sales or any of the things that really pressed my buttons. It was working with technology. Rudimentary as it might have been then in relation to where it is now, it was still massively transformatory. Things which used to, as a young sales manager, we used to have sales records of all our shops. They used to come and the office would come and give me a bunch of ledgers this thick. And if you wanted to take out, say, June of some year, you had to take out the right one, go through the towns, find the right. Oh my God, that was an activity in itself. Just in that one small thing, my Excel sheet transformed. Right. So the potential for transformation was crystal clear. Also, my impatience with the structured system was also gradually increasing. At the end of 4 years, it had reached its zenith, and I decided that whatever I may be on my own, that is what I will be. I may be a small, tiny, insignificant insect in the overall scheme of things, but I will be my own insect. I will not be somebody else's insect. So that was the motivation with which I started. And I was an insect. For a very long time, we used to wander around here and there trying to find some opportunity to make some money. We used to type letters for people who wanted to type letters. Any damn thing that anybody was willing to pay for, we would do, because we needed that money, right, to pay our bills. The financial industry came to our rescue, because the financial industry in India was among the first to adopt technology. And at that time, people who knew technology were relatively few. So in that sense, it was a marriage. It was a very, very big disadvantage that we were based in Chennai. That was a question I always used to face, because the center of finance then, even now, is Bombay. It used to cost, I think, 32 rupees a minute or something to make a call. So it was always a constant struggle to get people in Bombay to A, believe, and B, accept the cost of doing business with somebody in Chennai. But yeah, when you have a good product, you slug away. Ultimately, people do realize it's a good product. That is the only way I can explain it. So we served the peripheries of the Indian financial system for some period of time, 5 years, 7 years or so. It's when mutual funds were launched in India that we sort of came upon this sort of nascent opportunity. Now, I say nascent or latent opportunity because the only thing we did right was to recognize that it was an opportunity when so many other people who could have done so did not. That was the only right thing that we did. I can claim credit for in my entire life, that I recognized something is an opportunity when other people did not. After that, it was all one way. As all of them pointed out, there was liberalization, India opened up. The story continues to play. Now, first it was analog equivalent, as you said, of the digital highway. Then slowly the interest in markets slowly started increasing. Financialization of savings, converting from real estate, gold, etc. to financial securities. That has started happening, still playing out in a very big way. Foreign interest in Indian market. So each of these has been a massive tailwind to the financial sector in India, and we provided the picks and shovels, in a manner of speaking, to that industry. That is our business. Our business is all about providing the picks and shovels and the infrastructure to keep the financial sector running. And regardless of whether A did well or B did well or C did well as a principal entity, the infrastructure anyway got its due share, whether it was from A or B or C. So basically that's the story of our life in a summary.
So Shankar, we're going to sort of launch or re-release this book that came out. Can you tell us a little bit about what's in the book? What are some sort of key turning points that have been captured in the book? And also a little bit about who do you think should be reading this book?
See, I will place my entrepreneurial journey more in the context of, say, a DC than a Venkat, because Venkat still, it was a relatively new India when you launched Venkat. DC was still the old India. Perhaps between me and DC, the difference was that in my age, a precursor transformation had started to take place, which is that you did not need to know somebody to do somebody. Until then, unless you knew somebody, you could not do somebody. The first question was, who are you? Whose son are you, daughter are you, uncle are you, who's your uncle, If you did not have that guangxi, as they say in Chinese, you could not start business. That was the first time when slowly people became open to the idea that here's a guy who does not really know anybody and still I'm willing to trust him. So that was a very big change. It started happening in the mindset relative to DC perhaps, who was still in that old era. So I think that for me, two important takeaways for me from my own book, which I would leave to people who are starting now. One, there are pluses and minuses. It was a very tough time to start a business. There was no ecosystem, there was no infrastructure, there was no mentors, there was nothing, there was no capital. But opportunities were limited. So it's like going to a shop where there are only two types of toothpaste, so it's easy to, you select A or B and that's the end of it. Today you have all of that, but the entrepreneurial interest is enormous. Anything that you want to do, you will find 10 other people are doing it or have done it or in the process of doing it, or they are very large companies and they'll come and kill you or whatever. So the ecosystem is mature, the opportunities are plenty, but the competition is also massive. In either case, one thing for me stands out is that you have to give it time. You may not have to give it as much time as I had to give, which is 30 years. But certainly you cannot do anything in 3 years. In 3 years, nothing can happen to a startup. It will not reach any position where it has any sustainability in the world at all. Unless you're willing to enter the journey knowing that it is going to take a certain amount of time and have the patience for that, you should have that. So that is the first thing that, and today when I do have an alternate hat as an angel investor, and people come to us pitching, and there is a certain impatience I find in terms of what they want to achieve in a certain short time, which is good, but expectations must be set, one. The second thing is, many people have talked about it, IITM network. I will elevate it to say, to be part of a network is an incredibly powerful thing. You can never be, and this is not so much for a startup entrepreneur from IITM who's by default part of a network, but there are a lot of small businesses, right? 30, 40, 50 crore machine shop, manufacturing some widget, manufacturing some chemicals, old businesses. Their parents have started it, grandparents have started it. New generations come on board. The choice before the new generation is, should I sell this damn thing and do something totally different, or maybe do something transformative with this? And when the latter path is taken, typically they find themselves alone. They don't have anybody to talk to, because they may not necessarily come from an IIT and necessarily be part of a network. They may come from some smaller college where this is not such a mature ecosystem. My advice to all of them first is that the first thing you do is please go join a network. You join an EO or you join a TIE, depending on where you are in the scale. You join some network so that you have somebody to talk to, right? Coming and talking to me once in 6 months is not a solution to anything. You need to be part of a network. So I think two things for me, without going into the specifics of the company and every milestone and so on. Like any company, we had our crisis, and as I look back, I see great parallels. And my son was born at pretty much the same time my company was started. Everything that has happened to my company has happened to my son in his life, and everything that has happened to my son in his life has happened to the company. The company has wandered around aimlessly, with apologies. It has fallen ill. It has been diagnosed with apparently critical problems, which turned out to be not so. Finally, every conceivable problem that a human being could have in his life journey is reflected in some way or the other in the company. So that is, if you read the book, that is what will come through.
Okay, excellent. That's a very nice philosophical take to the book. I was actually going to ask you a little bit about how today's entrepreneurs should react to the book and what they should take away, but you've already answered that question. But I wanted to sort of flip it around a little bit and say, I think we sort of make this artificial distinction between entrepreneurs and people who are not entrepreneurs, whereas I think today everyone needs to be entrepreneurial. I think Rajiv was a great exemplar of that in the panel, but I think it even applies to people like us who are faculty who still need to be entrepreneurial in terms of trying to figure out how to further our research. What advice would you give to non-entrepreneurs, and what's there in the book that you think could help people outside the, by canonical definition, entrepreneurial community?
No, you hit the nail on the head. I think entrepreneurship is a state of mind more than a designation or the fact that you are doing something or your own boss. Those are incidental aspects of entrepreneurship. First and foremost is it has to be in your mind. And if it is in your mind, you can do it in the context of a larger organization or for yourself. Right? These are two different things. Sorry, what was the question?
So the question is, what can non-entrepreneurs, what canonically defined non-entrepreneurs, take away from the book? What would be your advice to people who are slightly different walks of life?
So I don't know about takeaway from the book, but I feel that people who are in the context of an existing business, it could be a family business which is old, or it could be that you're working for somebody. I think today it is perfectly possible to think outside of the box and sort of do something which is not in the line of what has been happening in your business all along. There was a young guy who came to me about 2 weeks back. He's an IITian. He passed out about 2 years back or 3 years back, and he's joined this. He has been supporting his father in the context of some medical business. But now he's, while he was at IIT, he was working for his father and getting some money. Now he's joined his father as a full-time employee. He came to me, he said, see, I feel very lonely because I run this business of my father. My father does not understand anything. There's no compatibility between the two of us. I say X and he says Y. What do? I don't know what to do. I have this great vision that this company will become a listed company, 1,000 crore turnover. I see a path there, but I don't know how to actualize that path because there is nobody to help me. What do I do? So we had a conversation around that. I see a lot of that. I see a lot of that amongst the commercial sector. I am making a distinction between entrepreneurial and commercial. Commercial is salons and, they are also business owners. We forget that. And they are also often small business owners who struggle because they don't have access to the networks that we have, access to the resources that we have. So right now, I am more focused personally on addressing that sector because I think that if you want employment generation, it's okay to start a rocket company or whatever. But true large-scale employment comes from service industries, from mid-market industries, by growing them. A jewelry store, or you go to Saravana, a cloth store. There are 500 employees working in that one building, right? The end of the day, they just stream out. If they open 3 more shops, you're generating 1,000 more jobs. And to generate those 1,000 jobs, you will have to have 400 startups or 300 startups, numerically. I think that there there's a great opportunity for entrepreneurship, formal entrepreneurship principles or formal management principles even, to get into that mid-market sector. And those are the things I hope that people learn from this book and from the journey, they infer from this book and from this journey.
Thanks, Shankar. Unfortunately, we're running a little bit out of time, and there are several other questions that we could ask. But I really want to sort of appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to help document this journey and some of these insights. For instance, even the previous panel I thought was fantastic. Some absolutely wonderful insights. And very often, I know there's a bunch of people in this room who are listening to this, but this is a very small group compared to the aspiring entrepreneurs that are out there. We are recording it, maybe others can see it, but I think some of these really need to be put down in an accessible form so that someone can pick up, reflect on these. So thank you very much for doing that. I think it will benefit the entire community. And the whole point of this fireside chat was to give you a little bit of insight into who Shankar is and how he thinks, so that perhaps you can anticipate what you might find in the book. But I thought we've been the dais has monopolized the conversation. So I thought we might take, well, in the interest of time.
If I may. I just, I'm just here. People keep thinking I had something extraordinary to do with camps. I was just one of those guys. As time passed, I just became one of the guys. I have 2 or 3 other colleagues who've been with me for a very long part of the journey. They are almost co-founders like me. I just want them to stand up and be recognized. Please. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, and yeah, I believe people make their own luck as well. So while there is a lot of potential serendipity to this, I think this comes out of the choices that people make. But thought maybe we could have one audience question. I apologize again, we don't have.
Thank you, sir. As we come to the end of this enlightening discussion and the launch of the book, An Eye for Detail, I would like to take a moment to express our heartfelt gratitude. First and foremost, I extend my sincere thanks to our distinguished speakers and panelists for sharing their invaluable insights and experiences. Your contributions have not only enriched our understanding of the innovation and entrepreneurship landscape, but have also inspired us to think creatively and collaboratively. I would also like to express my gratitude to the organizing team and all the support staff who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to make this event a success. Once again, thank you for your active participation and engagement. Your enthusiasm has made this event even more vibrant and meaningful. Thank you. I would like to invite all the guests for a high tea which has been arranged at the NX Dining Hall.